Hi, my name is Sherry Pittman, and I'd like to welcome you to another special segment of Survive and Thrive with Sherry. Today, our most important guest is Mr. Thomas R. Jones. Mr.
Pleasure
Jones, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. You have such a wide variety of experiences. I told you before the show that I'm very excited about having you here. And there's no way that a half an hour is going to do us justice, so I better cut to the chase quick, right, and get as much in as possible. You have 2 books, a play. You've held state positions. Are you also a part of the POW crowd?
Well, I'm not a part of the POW crowd. I did get wounded a couple of times. I do have a Purple Heart and some other medals. And,
okay.
So, but I wasn't a POW. I've been involved with the POWs because I was one of the 8 folks that really came up the idea for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial that's out at the Oak Ridge.
Very nice.
And so we have did programs where we have brought in all the POWs in the country here for ceremonies.
That's
there
impressive.
From Vietnam in terms of it.
And did their wives come?
The wives came with some, in terms of it. I mean, that was just an amazing experience to go through with these men that had been through this kind of you're talking about trials and tribulations.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
In terms of it. But I was in Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Maybe I should go back to the beginning. I'm a state brat.
You are a state brat. You mentioned that earlier. Was
I'm
it
a
Quincy,
state brat.
Peoria, and Chicago? But go a little further. Maybe I don't know where this fits in. But tell us about your wife. You are married.
Married.
Okay.
Right. Carol Ann used to be known as Carol Dew.
Okay.
Most of the folks here. She grew up here. She's a real Springfieldian.
Okay.
In terms. Fact is, 1986. We quit our good jobs. I was in the governor's cabinet, Governor Thompson's cabinet. She was in the Secretary of State's cabinet, Jim Egger. And everything that didn't fit in the car, we gave away and sold.
Wow.
And for 2.5 years, we just traveled America.
Is that right? Why did you choose to do that?
Well, we were so involved in so many things. We was in all these committees, I was involved in politics, because I had elected office in Peoria, a couple of terms on the county board there. And we just decided, how do you break old things and start new things? And we had this belief that we had the talent and the skills to go make a living anywhere. And so we did. We ended up first going out east and went around Connecticut and all those, and it really didn't really feel like the place we wanted to invest in. Had friends that lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. They said, "Why don't you come out here?" And I said, "That's what a writer does. Sits by the pool and you have profound thoughts and you put them on paper." So what if we was in Connecticut? We drove, and so, and they said, "Oh, you had some friends staying around Denver, Colorado." I said, "Why don't you stop and see them?" Well, we stopped there. We liked it so well. We stayed there about 8 or 9 months, and this was in the Rockies, Evergreen, Colorado, which was I've been. But then when the snow started coming down, my wife realized that they were giving the snow depth in feet instead of inches. She said I had to get her off the mountain. So we ended up going to the desert.
Okay.
And it just so happens when we did that, it was the same year that they had the biggest snowstorm. It hit the Rockies and just went back and forth. So we drove through a whole snowstorm. In fact, we got to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is in the desert. It was snow all on the cactuses.
Oh my
and snow.
goodness.
It was just unbelievable.
You were
sight.
fortunate to survive then during that time, it sounds like.
There was a lot of times, I've had that opportunity in my life. I think I've been blessed and at least I've had a chance to live to the point where I am today. I do a lot of talking to high school kids and college classes, and I tell them, I said, I've accomplished something you don't know if you will. And they say, "What's that?"
Right.
I'm 67 years old, a black man in America. You don't know if you're going to live till next week. I've done it.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I want to jump a little bit here.
Okay.
One of the things that I was excited about talking with you was about the whole Vietnam piece, because from a little girl in junior high school, I had a cousin that was in Vietnam, and when he came home, before he came home, my mom checked me because she knew I had a Connie Chung Oprah in me, and she said, "When he comes home, don't you ask him nothing."
He probably wouldn't have told you anyway.
Well, he probably wouldn't have, but I don't know because
Yeah.
there's a special gifting there.
Yeah.
It might have just opened up like
could have been,
a flower,
yeah.
you know,
Right,
after
and
the
open.
rain. So you just don't know. But I never got the opportunity to do that. So please tell me about Vietnam.
Well, I'll tell you my story, because the book I wrote, Lost Survivors, based a lot on my story. Like I said, I was a state brat. I ended up going to the Navy. And, you know, I wanted to be a bosun's mate because that's where all my uncles were. And, you know, the family that were in the Navy. Well, at that time, blacks were in a lot of other different professional. So I want to be a
boatsman mate.
Yeah, that means you paint and scrape the bottom of the ship all the time.
Yes. Chief boat cleaner.
But they gave me these tests, and the test said, "Oh, you should be a corpsman or a dental tech." I said, "Okay," but you know, being young, how we think about what we don't think about, and I said, "I don't want to be no dentist and mess with people's mouths and stuff, you know." So I be a corpsman. Well, the problem of being a corpsman is I've had, you know, in combat, the corpsman is the person that goes out, and I'll get into this in Vietnam because I was in long-range reconnaissance with the Marines.
I was going to say, I don't know what a corpsman is.
Well, corpsman is the medical, it'd be like medic in the Army.
I see.
You know, in terms of it. So I ended up going to a corpsman school in San Diego, and then I went to Camp Lejeune for FMF, i.e. the Marine boot camp.
Okay.
In terms of it. And then I went to Vietnam, and I was in the long-range reconnaissance. And it's 6 of us, and we go behind enemy lines for about 10 days to 2 weeks, you know, in our rotation.
That's pretty intense.
It was all intense every moment, because even if we went out, we come back for a week, we'd be out for roughly 2 weeks. And, you know, I tell folks, you know, one thing when you're in a small unit like that, especially in a jungle, now you have to understand, we don't understand peasant societies and jungles. I mean, in America, poor people have phones and cars. So now you go in a village and they got an ox and they rich. You know, what is that? We have no context of how to deal with that.
Sure.
Wasn't used to people shooting at you all the time trying to kill you either. That's not one of our daily kinds of things that we experience.
Oh, for some of us, right?
Most be thrusted in that kind of a situation, you know, in terms of it. So, and I got wounded a couple of times. And the thing about the combat, and I was in a lot of combat, you know, just because when you 6 men and you're behind enemy lines, anytime you get in a firefight, you're surrounded automatically. So I've had some, you know, a lot of contact. Well, one of the things that I wanted to capture in the book Lost Survivor is how combat redefines who you are.
Yes, and how does it redefine who we are?
Because all the things that define who you were before the moment of that,
yes,
don't count.
They don't count. They're just erased?
They erased. I was being interviewed down in Quincy, and the lady said, "Oh, so I guess you don't really worry if your mother pays your car insurance or not." And no, that is not you don't care about it. You don't think about it. You know, because the thing of staying alive is knowing where you are, not where you want to be. And if you start going by where you want to be in your mind, then you miss the things around you.
That you need to see right where you are. You need to live in the moment.
You need to live in the moment. And you do things of survival.
Sure.
That are so unacceptable if you just grew up here.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the problems that our country had with the men coming back from Vietnam, that as a society, we did not understand what it was like to be living in survival mode all the time.
That is very correct. And it wasn't like the other, I mean, this is in the jungle. You know, it's not a civilization, it's in the jungle. And what it does to you, to survive in the jungle, you got to be an animal.
Yes.
Because that's what's normal.
Yes.
And you turn into an animal.
Yes.
And it's for pure survival.
Right.
And then you come back. And the first thing, you know, like, you know, coming back and there was people spitting on the Vietnam veterans, talking about they were there killing kids and all. And So it was such a tumultuous time, and it was a time when there was all this revolution going on. There was challenge of authority, you know, in terms of what was going on in America too. And in the middle of all of this, you got these guys who served their country coming back and being accused of being baby killers and all of that at the time.
Yes.
Well, you know, they were doing their duty to the country. It wasn't their choice to say, I want to go over here and do this. And when they came back, so that's why you see Vietnam veterans they weren't really joiners. They didn't really come back and join a lot of the...
And they weren't welcome to join
And they were not welcome because they kept saying, oh, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with veterans from other wars, and they said, oh, you know, you disgraced us, you're over there doing this and that. And of course, I was assistant director of veteran affairs under Governor Thompson. I was a member of his cabinet. And one of the things I used to tell them was, well, let's see, when you drop the bombs on the cities in World War II, did you tell all the women and children to leave?
Thank you.
You know, so war is war. War is not something that is normal and it's out of. So, and Vietnam was very unusual in terms of the kind of war, fighting in the jungle. And so you come back, everybody that sees you, you look like the loved one that left.
Sure.
But you're not that person.
No.
So there's a problem how you get traction back in your life, because now you're trying to get traction back in your life, not as the person that left, but as a person who came back, who was totally different.
Yeah. We have a lack of understanding, compassion, and we had, as a country, the responsibility to receive our warriors back from Vietnam in a way that we were not equipped to do. And that's not an excuse. That is an indictment. And I'm not blaming necessarily any particular organization or group of people. It is just simply a fact.
It was the sign of the times, because you had all this other stuff, you know, all the hippies and everybody's going through challenging authority and all these things happening. At the same time, these guys are coming back.
And authority needed to be challenged at that time. That was part of the problem.
And well, we've learned as time has went that, unfolded in terms of it. So what I came back, and it's kind of interesting, I came back, I had an opportunity to go to any school or any base, because coming back from Vietnam, you know, the combat.
Right.
And so I said, what's the most difficult school to get into? And they said, radioisotope nuclear medicine.
Okay, hold it right there, because we have to go to break.
Okay.
You know, I told you earlier, I am just so deep into this, I can forget the time and everything. But we do have to take a break, so hold it right there, Mr. Jones.
All right.
We're glad that you're joining us. Please remain with us. Come back. Remember that the show does air every Wednesday at 7:30 on Fox 55, Channel 7, and also on Saturdays. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about this whole thing about Vietnam. We'll be back. Hi, my name is Sherry Pittman, and I'd like to welcome you to join us in watching Survive and Thrive with Sherry every Wednesday morning at 7:30 a.m. on Fox Channel 7 WRSP. You can also catch us on Access 4 at 10:30, 4:30, and again at 10:30 p.m. We look forward to having you join us watching the show. We love to talk about marriages and other things as well, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. We're back with Mr. Thomas R. Jones, and he was just sharing with us about the whole Vietnam experience. Mr. Jones, you have successfully gotten your footing back after the whole Vietnam piece. Tell us what was instrumental, what was key for you to do that?
Well, I ended up devoting myself to helping other veterans. When I came back from Vietnam, as I said, I had a choice. Duty station or school. I want the most difficult. Why have a choice and go for the easiest? So they said, what's the most difficult? And they said radioisotope nuclear medicine school. And I said, I always wanted to be one of them. I never heard of them. I knew they didn't send them to Vietnam to get shot at. So I ended up having to go to the National Naval Medical Center at Bethesda, Maryland for this radioisotope nuclear medicine. And I discovered you're supposed to be smart to go there. You just didn't go there not to get shot no more.
Okay.
So I said, okay, but if being smart is not the way to get shot no more, hey,
You're
I learned the way. So when I came from there, I ended up running the radioisotope lab at the Great Lakes Naval Hospital, which was the orthopedic hospital for the returning from Vietnam. So I ended up, all these kids had full body casts and all. And since I was a Vietnam combat veteran, so I ended up counseling a lot of them because they were in beds with casts, and they wanted to really talk to someone who had been through the experience of combat.
Sure.
And that's what really started, because I ended up being this counselor to a lot of these kids and all coming back from Vietnam at Great Lakes Naval Hospital. And then when I came out, I had a choice of either going and running the radioisotope lab at Presbyterian St. Luke's in Chicago, or help start this new program called the Trauma, which is all the paramedics and all that.
Okay, well, let's stay back with the center first, with the guys in the full body cast and needing to talk. What were some of the things that they needed to get off their chest?
First of all, you got these young men who are so vital and, just got so much energy, and all of a sudden now they've been wounded. And you see it today even, when you see it on TV. And now all of a sudden they're in this full body cast and can't move. They've been through these terrible experiences of survival that they can't talk about. And
why is
to their family.
Why is it they can't talk? Just real briefly to their
There's
families.
a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is that you do, like when I grew up, my grandmother taught me all kinds of things not to do.
Sure.
And it was simple because I understood right and wrong, because if my grandmother gonna whoop me, that was wrong.
That was wrong.
Conceptually, I didn't have no thoughts of it, but if she gonna whoop me,
right.
Well, all of a sudden now you got these kids and you did all these wrongs according to the society when you come back, and what you had to do to survive.
Sure.
And you have a mixture of guilt,
Sure.
shame,
Sure.
Fear, because it's in you. And how do you let it out? Well, you can't really talk to anybody that has an understanding, because you start a conversation with a loved one, and you said, oh yeah, well I had to do this or this, or you had to kill or whatever, and they say, ooh, that's terrible. Well, the conversation is not going to go too much further.
Because that judgment has been passed.
Judgment.
They're in shock.
Because the judgments are on the values that we grow up with here. You have been in a total
Not the value of
different
living the next
survival.
20 seconds.
And the whole thing of you have to kill to survive. It's not where we norm. That's not our norm. And all of a sudden you've done this. So who are you now?
Right.
And when you come back and you see everybody is saying to you, well, after a while all this Vietnam crap will be out of your head. It never leaves. It's always there.
So when they talk with you, does that help to get it out of their heads?
Oh yeah, because now they're talking to somebody that has been through the experience. I've been, and being a corpsman, I worked in grave registration, where I hate it, but being a corpsman and going out on patrols with them, and the number of men that I've had that have died in my arms, and I understand what it means. I understand what it means with men, the bonding between men. One of the kind of crazy things in all this is what comes out in these kind of situations is a bonding between men that we can't call love. But
what do you call it?
It's what it is.
A bonding.
It's a bonding. They call it bonding, but it's love.
What comes out is love?
It is love.
I thought you said that you cannot call it love.
Well, no, not a man thing.
Not a man can. Oh.
When you hear them say that, I love that guy?
Yeah. Oh.
When they come to the funeral, I love him.
Yeah, right.
But you won't tell him that while he's alive.
Okay.
It's just, right.
It's part of that cultural training again.
Masculinity thing, is that. But when you did, I can tell I love you. As a man to man. But if you do that, I don't want nothing to be thinking anything now, because I tell you I love you.
Right.
So really, so when I had conversations with, I've been through it, and they could talk about it openly, and there was no judgment other than the appreciation that you hear alive.
Yes.
That was the important thing.
Would you say that part of what was helping them to get better, let's say, was that, or you might even say healing for them, was that you could listen to their story, and to some degree, because it was your story and it was not judgmental, that you could have empathy, and you could understand why they made a decision that they had to make in that moment. That it would have been the same thing that you probably would have did.
Right, and that's where the help came, because that's where it helped me, because by me helping them walk through their trials, tribulations, the things that happen, it forced me to deal with my own.
And they're telling their story. They were also telling your story.
Oh, yes.
Now, did you share some of your story with
I
some
had
of
to,
them?
because otherwise they would know you were real. You know when you talk to somebody, have they been through the experience or not.
Okay, you're going to tell me one thing. I know it may not be the easiest, but you're accustomed to talking about some of these things. Pick one thing and share with me that you would have shared with one of them, or they would have shared with you, and we don't even have to say it's yours. You can just make it hypothetical. How about that? But an actual one, hypothetical, actual. It don't have to be hypothetical, but it can be somebody else's.
Right,
okay, we won't say whose it is.
Okay.
That would have been the kind of thing, or the thing that one desperately needs to share and get off their chest.
The first time you actually get in combat and you shoot another man. How that happens depends on how your rest of your life goes. If you're just shooting at a lot of uniforms coming at you, it's one thing.
Nondescript.
Right. But if you shoot a man individually,
eyeball to eyeball,
and you know it's a man.
Yes.
So, because what we do is we say they're the enemy, which gives us that distance to be able to do that.
Sure.
But when you do your first time you get in combat and you actually see the eyes of the person and you close up, you realize he's a man. This is the first time. And that is the thing that really disturbs you, because there is when you make that decision of what and who you're going to be from that point on.
Why are you making a decision from that? Why is it from that point on? Because I'm thinking, in my little shallow know-nothing mind here, that if you were someone prior to the combat in that intense moment, that just like there was change then, there can be change again. And obviously, you're proof of that.
But the changes that come are not. That is an instantaneous change that real changes your whole life from that point on.
Yes, so that would I would agree with.
And it's not something, and if you don't get help, and the help is really being able to talk it out and with somebody that can listen to you without judgment, I mean, if the first time, the enemy is this thing that we just beat, but when you're very aware of and have a close encounter with the first person you shoot,
he's another person like you.
Still a person,
right?
And you be thinking, well, he's a man like me,
right,
and he don't want to be here either like me,
right? And he has a family and children and cousins and uncles and life.
And that's what happened the first time.
But if I don't take him,
I might die.
No, you're going to die.
Yeah, that's right. And he may have the same thoughts, because you be thinking.
Exactly.
But again, it's not necessarily that it's the same thought, because you are, the personalization of that moment really helps to start redefining who you are. If you got to kill to live, well, that does something to you.
Yes.
Now, wars will be here because they're in such a scale and national, a lot of other interest and all. That's a reality.
But what continues to do damage is that you cannot tell anybody.
Well, no, how can you come back? I come back, my grandmother says, oh, what you do over there? Well, wait a minute. I can't say I did everything against everything you taught me. Because that's what happened. Taught me good.
Unless she is very understanding.
Even if she's understanding, how can I tell my grandmother? How can I tell my grandmother that I did all these things against everything she taught me? She can be very understanding and say, I understand. But the feeling. Now, I go talk to somebody else who's been through the experience. Now it is more of it's more close to someone who understands because they know those feelings of what it is. Your grandmother's going to say.
Do you have to have the feelings to be empathetic? Do you have to have the actual experience?
It helps. Now they have clinicians, that do a lot like with the post-traumatic stress and all.
Sure.
So now they've got it. That's a clinical thing. So one of the interesting things about post-traumatic stress in World War, before in World War I, World War II, it was called shell shock, called combat fatigue. But when we got to Vietnam, it became a clinical diagnosis, where now we have a whole profession built around that. That's different. And the truth of the matter is, everybody now, since they now have a clinical definition for it, has experienced it. When 9/11 occurred, all of America had post-traumatic stress because everything that was supposed to be you thought was real, like tall buildings, disappeared just like that. And all the people that died, and So what happens is even in New York, people were nice to each other for a whole week. That's big for New York, a week.
Okay, we're going to have to hold it. We're gonna get ready to end this segment. Unfortunately.
Well, I didn't even have a chance to make sure you at least.
Well, we're going to cut into the book, so
okay.
we'll make sure we get that.
All right,
not a problem.
I appreciate that.
But we would love to have you back.
I
would love to have you back. So.
I would like to come back and talk about it because I am going to be doing October 13th and 14th at the Convention Center.
Yes.
I'm doing a play that is based on the book.
Okay. Well, let me say thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thanks.
And thank you, our audience. Join us again next week. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.